In this video, I'm going to go over some very important notation of how to write functions and, of course, inverse functions. So let's just write notation. All right? Notation. So if you remember, if we said if f of x is a function, and if you remember what a function is something that has an input x, and obviously this is the output. Okay, so if f of x is a function, then we put a little -1 there, and then of x is the inverse function. Okay, so what I want to emphasize here, this little -1 does not mean the reciprocal. So for example, if I write f of -1, this is not equal to 1 over f of x. So it's very important. This -1 does not mean the reciprocal. This -1 simply means that is the inverse function. So keep this in mind, that f -1 is not that. All right, it is not equal to that. So the next thing I want to talk about is how do we find the inverse function? So here is the general technique. Okay. The general technique, and I'll go over an example of this in the next video, but I really want you to understand this. The general technique is always switch the x and y, and then solve for y. Okay? So why are we switching the x and y? Sorry, let me just repeat that. The general technique is switch the x and y and then solve for y. So first of all, why are we switching the x and y? If you remember from the previous video, what was the output? In other words, the y then becomes the input, which is the x. And what is the x, which was the input, then becomes y, the output. So it's very important that we switch the x and y, because all we're doing is switching the inputs and outputs. And then you solve for y. So in the next video, I will show you a clear example of a function and how we find its inverse. I'll see you in the next video.